Welcome to the dark. I collect stories people don't want to tell. Some are real. Some should have stayed hidden.
So, I want you to just picture the playground in your neighborhood.
Oh, sure.
You know, the bright colors, the soft wood chips, the sunlight. It's like the absolute undisputed center of childhood safety.
Right, a totally curated space.
Exactly. It's a space literally engineered for innocence, you know, where the absolute worst thing you expect to happen is maybe a scraped knee.
Yeah, that's the expectation.
But now, imagine walking past that exact same spot at midnight, only to find the playground is just completely gone.
Right.
And the city zoning records say it was never built to begin with. But you know you saw it. You know you heard the swings.
Well, it's the ultimate subversion of the mundane, really.
Yeah.
We rely on our local geography to be static. A street is a street, a building is a building.
Right.
So when a familiar, comforting space spontaneously generates in the dead of night, it stops being a structure and becomes something highly predatory.
That is such a creepy way to put it. Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today, we are opening up a localized urban legend known as Ashwood Playground. And we aren't just summarizing some spooky ghost story here. We have a highly specific, documented narrative detailing this impossible space.
Which is fascinating to unpack.
It really is. We are going to treat this phenomenon as a factual ecosystem. The mission today is to completely dissect its anatomy, how it physically operates, the brutal logic behind its survival rules, and the deeply disturbing case study of a 17-year-old photographer who just got way too close.
Right, because we really need to figure out the mechanics of this trap.
Yeah, trap.
Because that is exactly what Ashwood Playground is described as. It's a trap. We are looking at a phenomenon that uses the aesthetic of nostalgia to disguise a biological imperative to consume.
Yes, wow.
I mean, we have to deconstruct the illogical horror of this space using a rigid, logical framework.
Right, so settle in and picture that empty lot down your street, because we're walking right into Ashwood.
Here we go.
Before we can even figure out who disappears into this anomaly, we really have to map out the geography of a ghost, the difference between the daytime reality and the midnight anomaly.
The physical setting is our foundation here.
Right.
The reality of this location is incredibly mundane. I mean, it is just an empty dirt lot sitting behind an old church. Abandoned. Ignored.
Just totally unremarkable.
Exactly. There are no swing sets, no slides, no rubberized flooring, just dirt, weeds, and grass all year round.
But the anomaly triggers after midnight.
Yes.
That mundane reality fractures. A fully formed playground just manifests in that empty space. And it's perfectly clean, brightly lit, bathed in moonlight.
It's a stark contrast.
It is. And the most jarring detail, there is absolutely zero historical or bureaucratic footprint.
None at all.
Like no construction history, no opening ceremonies.
The spatial contradiction here is just staggering. You have a physical environment manifesting strongly enough that people can see it and hear it,
Right.
Yet it absolutely refuses to adhere to the laws of physical history. I mean, when local police search the area during the day, which they have done numerous times, they find absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
The ground isn't even disturbed.
Nothing except, and this is the detail that completely breaks my brain, except for this one agonizing physical clue.
Right, the chain.
Yes. During one of these daytime searches, a police officer actually dug into the dirt of that empty lot and found a single physical artifact, an old, completely rusted swing chain.
Attached to absolutely nothing.
Attached to nothing, just buried in the dirt. And when that chain was carbon dated, it proved to be over 100 years old.
Which is impossible, according to the record.
Exactly, because every single municipal zoning map proves there has never, ever been a playground on that site.
I want you to really think about the physical implications of that chain, though.
Okay, lay it on me.
Rust requires oxygen, moisture, and time. It is a process of physical decay.
Right, it's science.
But if the playground only exists as a supernatural manifestation after midnight, well, it shouldn't leave physical debris. The fact that it does leaves us with a terrifying conclusion. The phenomenon is actively mocking reality.
Oh, wow. It's leaving a receipt.
Precisely. By burying a 100-year-old artifact in a place where it historically could not exist, the anomaly proves its own reality while demonstrating that it is entirely unconstrained by linear time.
That is wild.
It is dropping an anchor into our physical world. It's like finding a fossil of an animal that biology says never existed.
And this impossible animal, it's been hunting for a really long time.
Decades, at least.
Yeah, the first heavily documented encounter with this anomaly actually dates back to 1975.
Right.
It was a newspaper delivery driver just taking a shortcut through the neighborhood late at night. He pulls over because suddenly, in this empty field behind the church, there's a brightly lit playground.
And the sensory details of this 1975 encounter, they really established the operational template for the entire phenomenon.
Yeah, they do.
The visual cues are incredibly striking. The driver notices the swings are moving gently back and forth.
Right.
But the air is completely dead. There is no wind. The physics of the space are already failing to mimic reality correctly.
Which is exactly when he sees the lure.
Yes.
There's a little girl sitting on one of those moving swings. She's in a white dress, bare feet.
Yeah.
And she is swinging higher and higher, but she isn't pushing herself.
Right. She's passive.
Yeah. Her legs aren't pumping at all.
The momentum is being artificially generated by the environment itself. She is defying gravity and physics, just as the playground defies history.
It's all part of the show.
Exactly. The environment is creating a kinetic display just to draw the driver's attention.
And it works. The driver is watching her. And then the little girl turns to him, smiles, and delivers this highly specific trigger phrase.
The invitation.
Yeah. She says, "Will you play with us?"
It's a direct demand for engagement.
It totally is. When I was looking at this, I immediately thought of like a malicious digital pop-up ad.
Oh, that's a really good comparison.
Yeah, right. I mean, think about how a pop-up works. It generates spontaneously on your screen, blocking your view. It uses a bright, curated image, in this case, the nostalgic image of a child on a swing, to demand an interaction.
Right. It hijacks your focus.
Exactly. It wants you to click, "Will you play with us?"
Mm-hmm.
It's just a supernatural clickbait title. It wants you to hit yes.
Yes. It needs that confirmation.
And if you don't engage, like if you close the window and speed away like that driver did, it just vanishes the next night, waiting in the code to pop up for the next user.
The pop-up ad analogy works brilliantly because it highlights the mechanical nature of the ambush.
Yeah.
It is a synthetic environment designed to completely bypass human defense mechanisms.
Because it looks innocent.
Exactly.
All right.
A little girl in a white dress doesn't trigger the fight-or-flight response the way a dark alleyway does.
Right.
But over the years, the encounters didn't always end with someone driving away. The anomaly kept manifesting. Someone would hear laughter.
Yeah.
Someone would accept the invitation. Someone would disappear.
Which means the local community, like the actual people physically living near this empty lot, they were forced into a corner.
They had to adapt.
Right, because this thing has a body count.
Right.
They had to develop a survival system. If you live next to a minefield, you eventually map out where not to step.
Out of pure necessity.
Yeah. So this local mythology of survival evolved into 6 incredibly rigid rules.
The architecture of survival.
Yeah.
And if we analyze these 6 rules, they act as a masterclass in understanding exactly how a predatory anomaly hunts.
Let's break them down then.
Sure.
The first 5 rules are all about sensory restriction. Number 1, never look toward the laughter.
Right.
Number 2, never touch the merry-go-round. Number 3, never count the swings.
Interesting one.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Number 4, never follow the sound of children singing. And number 5, if someone asks you to play, don't answer.
What is happening here is a deliberate, systematic weaponization of human curiosity.
Wow.
These rules are entirely governed by the concept of sensory denial. The entity knows exactly how humans map their reality.
Through their senses.
Through their senses, exactly.
So walk us through how that actually functions in practice. Like if you are standing there in the dark, what is the entity actually doing to you?
It's targeting your core biological inputs. So never look toward the laughter. Preys on your visual cortex and your evolutionary instinct to locate the source of an unexpected sound.
Right. You hear noise, you look.
Right. Never touch the merry-go-round targets your tactile sense. The moment your skin meets metal, you establish a physical tether to the illusion.
Oh, that's creepy.
Never follow the singing, manipulates your spatial orientation and your hearing. And don't answer strips you of speech, which is your primary tool for social connection.
So it's hitting every single input.
The entity is constantly throwing out stimuli, desperately trying to trick you into confirming its existence.
So wait, if you ignore the stimuli, you basically starve the anomaly.
You deny it a foothold in your reality. Engaging your senses with an illusion grants that illusion mass and gravity.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
The rules are essentially a psychological manual for staying anchored in your own mundane world while standing knee-deep in a supernatural one.
Okay, I follow the logic for sight, hearing, touch, and speech.
Right.
But that leaves rule number 3, hanging out entirely on its own.
Ah, the counting.
Yeah. Never count the swings. I mean, you aren't touching them. You aren't talking to them.
Why is counting dangerous?
It's a great question.
Going back to my computer analogy, it feels like an attempt to glitch a program. Like counting is an act of logic. It's mathematics.
Yeah.
So if you start assigning numerical values, 1, 2, 3, 4 to a supernatural space, does engaging that highly logical part of the human brain force the illusion to break? Like you are imposing order on something fundamentally chaotic.
I see where you're going with the glitching idea, but I don't think it's about causing an error in the system.
Yeah.
I'd actually look at it differently. It's about arrogance.
Yes. Counting is the ultimate human attempt to master and categorize an environment. When you count the swings, you are attempting to put a supernatural predator into a measurable box.
Oh, wow. So you're saying it's like an insult to the anomaly.
Exactly. The playground doesn't glitch, it gets offended.
Wow.
Think about it. A dream or a supernatural illusion relies on fluidity. It lacks defined boundaries. If you apply strict, rigid numerical logic to it, you aren't just observing it, you are trying to define it.
You're trying to control it.
And the entity reacts to that not as a passive glitch, but as a hostile act of aggression. You are essentially trying to measure the jaws of the trap.
You try to count its teeth, and it bites you.
Yes, you force it to become real by measuring it. And a physical predator is far more immediately lethal than an imagined one.
That completely reframes the entire survival manual for me.
It changes the dynamic.
It really does.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the final, most catastrophic rule. Rule number 6. The one that nobody in the local community understood until it was too late.
The breaking point.
Yeah. Rule 6 is, if you see yourself on the playground, run.
This completely shifts the paradigm of the threat.
How so? Like mechanically?
Well, the first 5 rules are all about ignoring an external environment. Don't look at the swings, don't touch the metal.
Right.
But Rule 6 implies a catastrophic failure of the environment itself. The anomaly stops acting like a playground and starts acting like you.
Oh, that is chilling. And the only reason Rule 6 even exists is because someone broke it.
Exactly.
Which pulls us directly into the heart of this deep dive, the concrete, documented case study of Noah Briggs.
The tragedy of Noah Briggs gives us a mechanical breakdown of what happens when the rules fail.
Yeah, it really does. So Noah is 17. He is an aspiring photographer. And unlike the delivery driver from 1975, Noah isn't a victim of circumstance.
No, he's seeking it out.
Right. He isn't taking a shortcut. He is actively hunting the anomaly. His motivation is empirical proof.
He wants to capture it.
Exactly. He arrives at the empty lot at exactly 12:18 a.m. And I want you, listening right now, to just imagine that level of deliberate intent. Standing out there in the dark, staring at a dirt patch, just waiting for the world to break.
It takes a lot of nerve.
It does. And at 12:18, it breaks. The playground manifests. Noah raises his camera. At first, everything through the viewfinder seems relatively normal.
Standard playground equipment.
Yeah. Slides, swings, a seesaw.
But the turning point hinges entirely on his equipment. He isn't relying on his naked eye.
No.
He zooms in.
He zooms in on the jungle gym, and standing right beside it is himself.
A perfect doppelganger.
A perfect match, wearing the exact same clothes, holding the exact same camera, just standing there perfectly still watching him.
We need to really dissect the role of the camera here because it fundamentally alters the interaction.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I was thinking of the camera lens acting almost like a scalpel.
Okay, how so?
Well, did the physical act of photographing the space, like of trying to capture it objectively on film, did that cause the duplicate to manifest as a defense mechanism?
I see.
Or does the camera simply strip away the aesthetic illusion of the playground, allowing Noah to see the trap that was already sitting there waiting for him?
That's a great distinction. If we rely on the mechanics we've established so far, the camera is a tool of objective capture. It records photons. It records light.
Right.
But the anomaly relies on subjective illusion and sensory manipulation.
Oh, okay.
By looking through a lens, especially a zoom lens, which compresses depth and brings the background violently into the foreground, Noah bypasses the passive sensory denial rules. He is forcefully focusing his sight, aided by technology, directly onto the anomaly.
So he is forcing it into a tangible medium.
Yes. And the anomaly cannot hide behind the facade of a little girl or moving empty swings when subjected to that level of objective scrutiny.
The trick doesn't work anymore.
Right, the illusion shatters. So to maintain control, the playground reflects Noah's own image back at him. It's an apex predatory tactic designed to induce total cognitive paralysis.
To freeze him in place.
Exactly.
And it works perfectly. Noah lowers the camera. He makes direct, unprotected eye contact with his duplicate.
And that's the mistake.
Yeah. And the other, Noah smiles. Then it waves.
That physical gesture is the catalyst for the entire environment collapsing. The source material says, every playground ride stopped moving. The laughter ended. Silence.
The performance is officially over. The curtain drops. And suddenly, every single child in that playground turns toward Noah.
All of them at once.
Dozens of them.
Yeah.
But they weren't there a second before. And the physical description of these entities is pure, unadulterated nightmare fuel.
It really is grotesque.
Each child is smiling, but none of them have eyes. Just completely smooth skin where their eyes should be.
The removal of the eyes is incredibly significant here.
Why is that?
Well, eyes represent humanity, connection, and the soul. A smooth face completely removes the possibility of empathy.
Ugh. Smooth faces, except for their mouths. Their mouths are described as being too wide, stretching too far across their faces, and filled with way too many teeth.
This is a classic hallmark of biological consumption. Exaggerated features designed exclusively for feeding.
Right.
The disguise of innocent, nostalgic children has entirely sloughed off to reveal the mechanics of a thresher.
That is horrifying. So, standing amidst this crowd of eyeless children, the doppelganger whispers something to Noah. 2 words. You're late.
You're late. Think about the implication of that phrasing.
It's so specific.
It implies a predetermined appointment, an inescapable destiny that Noah was entirely unaware he had already scheduled.
Oh, man.
The entity isn't reacting to his presence, you see. It has been anticipating his arrival.
Then the children start singing. The text notes. It's a nursery rhyme that nobody's ever heard before.
Right.
The words are nonsense, but Noah understands them perfectly.
This is where the horror of Ashwood Playground elevates from a localized physical threat to something profoundly existential. What are they actually singing?
They aren't singing words, they're counting.
Right.
But not numbers. They're counting his years. One by one, they're counting his lifespan.
The threat brilliantly shifts right here. It moves from a spatial danger, being physically consumed by monsters, to a temporal one.
Yeah.
The playground is weaponizing his own mortality against him. The song is a countdown, or rather a count-up of his existence. It is literally consuming his timeline.
And remember rule number 3, never count the swings.
Yes, the inverse.
It's a dark, inverse reflection of that rule. Noah didn't count the swings, but now the anomaly is counting him.
Exactly.
Once Noah realizes what the singing means, his survival instinct finally kicks in. He runs.
The ultimate flight response.
He turns and sprints toward the church parking lot. But behind him in the dark, he hears the footsteps following him.
The pursuit.
Yeah, and this is the detail that gets under my skin more than anything else in the entire source text. The children aren't running after him. They are skipping.
We have to analyze the biomechanics of skipping in this context.
Please do, because it's awful.
Skipping is an incredibly inefficient mode of transportation. It expends excess vertical energy. It's an act of leisure. It's playful.
Which means they aren't even trying hard.
Precisely. If a predator is running, it implies a contest. It implies the prey actually has a chance to escape.
Right, like a chase.
But skipping implies absolute certainty. They aren't straining to catch him because they already know the outcome of the pursuit. They are simply enjoying the terror they are inflicting.
Ugh. So, Noah hits the asphalt of the church parking lot. He looks back over his shoulder, and the playground is gone.
Just gone.
The bright lights, the swings, the eyeless children, vanished. It's just the empty dirt field again.
He escaped the physical geography of the ghost.
He did. The text literally says he thought he'd escaped. And wouldn't you? You're standing under a street lamp. You can feel the hard pavement under your shoes. The physical anomaly is gone.
But this brings us to the most insidious, inescapable part of the Ashwood legend.
Yeah, it's a trap.
Escaping the physical space did not mean escaping the phenomenon.
The jaws of the trap had already closed. He just couldn't feel the teeth yet.
That's exactly it.
We move into the aftermath here, the inescapable loop. Noah makes it home. He is safe. Or, so he thinks.
Right.
He pulls out his camera to review the evidence. He wants to see the proof he risked his life for. But a massive temporal anomaly has occurred within the digital files.
The photos.
Yeah, every single picture he took of the slides, the moving swings, the seesaw, they have all retroactively changed.
The playground has effectively scrubbed itself from its objective record. Yeah. In the photos, the lot is completely empty.
Except for one impossible exception.
Right.
There's one final image, on the camera roll. And this picture was supposedly taken after Noah had already dropped his camera and fled to the parking lot.
Which is physically impossible.
He did not physically press the shutter button for this photo.
And what does the final image show?
It shows Noah, still standing inside Ashwood Playground, smiling,
Oh, God.
completely surrounded by the crowd of eyeless, wide-mouthed children, and the detail that entirely seals his fate. He checks the metadata.
The timestamp.
The timestamp on this specific photograph isn't from the past. The camera clearly states this photo was taken for tomorrow night.
This is a devastating demonstration of the fatalism built into the entity's mechanics.
It really is.
It proves that the playground never actually needed to physically catch Noah in the dirt lot. It didn't need the skipping children to tackle him to the ground.
Because it already had him.
Yes, it had successfully anchored its teeth into his timeline.
Wow.
That photograph showing him smiling with the entities wasn't a warning of what might happen. It was a receipt of a transaction that had already been processed.
A receipt. Wow.
The timestamp was not a technological glitch. It was a supernatural reservation.
Hmm.
The anomaly operates completely outside of linear time. The moment Noah looked at his doppelganger, the moment he broke Rule 6, he permitted the entity to rewrite his future.
So Noah deletes the photos. He tries to scrub the evidence as if that will somehow sever the tether.
Denial.
Total denial. But the cycle is locked. The narrative jumps forward to the very next evening. The clock kicks over to exactly 12:14 a.m.
The precise minute he arrived the night before.
His appointment time.
Exactly.
His phone rings. There is no caller ID. He answers it and immediately hears the sound of children laughing in the background.
And then?
Then his own voice whispers through the speaker, "Come back."
Ah.
And the document bluntly states, Noah disappeared that night. He was never seen again.
This sequence raises a deeply unsettling physical and philosophical question regarding the nature of his disappearance.
I am so glad you brought that up because I have been turning this over in my head. I really need your perspective on this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Based on the mechanical rules we've discussed, did Noah actually escape that first night?
What do you mean?
Well, did his consciousness, like his actual physical timeline, split the very second he looked through that camera lens and made eye contact with the duplicate?
Oh, that is an interesting thought.
Right, because Rule 6 says if you see yourself run. But what? Running is pointless.
Because it's already too late.
Yes. What if the real Noah, his soul, his essence, stayed in the playground and was trapped in that photograph, and the version of Noah that physically ran to the parking lot, the one who drove home and looked at the camera, was just a hollow biological shell,
A decoy.
a copy that was slowly being reeled back into the original over the course of the next 24 hours?
I wouldn't just call that a plausible theory. I would argue it is the only mechanical explanation that actually fits the evidence.
Really?
Think about the pursuit. If his timeline split at exactly 12:18 a.m., that explains why the skipping children didn't try to tackle him.
Oh, because they didn't need to.
They didn't need his physical body at that moment. The body that ran to the car was essentially the severed tail of a lizard.
Ew. But yes.
The camera acted as the scalpel that separated his physical self from his temporal self.
Right.
The doppelganger told him, "You're late," because the doppelganger was now the primary entity.
Oh my God.
Then, on the phone, the voice says, "Come back." It implies a reclamation of property.
It is so dark.
The playground claimed his essence the moment the shutter clicked. The shell simply had to be recalled when the reservation came due.
And once it claimed him, the entire cycle immediately renewed itself. The narrative doesn't end with Noah vanishing. It jumps forward. It says, months later, another teenager claimed to see Ashwood Playground.
The trap resets.
Yeah.
The bait has been refreshed.
The teenager sees the brightly lit space. The swings are moving slowly. Children are laughing in the distance. But there's a massive, horrific change in the ecosystem of the anomaly.
The new lure.
Sitting quietly on the tallest swing is Noah.
He looks exactly the same as the night he vanished.
He smiles at the new teenager, and he gently asks the exact same trigger phrase. Will you play with us?
The exact same phrase the little girl in the white dress used in 1975.
Yeah.
Noah has been fully integrated into the machinery. He has become the lure.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this deep dive. Having looked at the geography, the sensory rules, and the victim, we need to zoom out.
Who do?
What is this urban legend fundamentally trying to teach us about the concept of being lost?
We have to analyze the final, definitive lines of the source narrative. It provides a thesis statement for the entire phenomenon, really.
Yeah, it states, people believe the playground is haunted by lost children.
And the final line.
The legend says the children were never the ones who got lost.
Let's break the architecture of that statement down completely.
Please do.
What this reveals is that Ashwood Playground is not a passive purgatory. It is not some tragic, localized haunting where wandering souls just happen to congregate.
No, it is a highly active predatory ecosystem.
Exactly.
It's an engine, and an engine constantly requires fuel. And to get that fuel, it replaces its bait. That is the most horrifying realization of this entire deep dive for me.
It changes everything.
That little girl in the white dress from the 70s. She wasn't the owner of the playground. She wasn't the primary ghost pulling the strings. She was just the lure they were using back then.
She was swapped out.
Noah is simply the newest bait on the hook.
The victims aren't lost in the traditional sense, you see. They are consumed, processed, and repurposed.
Repurposed, God.
The anomaly weaponizes the innocence of childhood and the comfort of nostalgia as a camouflaged hunting blind. The entities with the smooth faces and the wide mouths, they are the actual native flora and fauna of this trap.
And the kid.
The normal-looking kid on the swing, whether it's the girl in the dress or Noah Briggs, is just the glowing appendage of an anglerfish dangled out to draw you into the dark.
Wow. For you listening to this right now, why does a narrative like Ashwood stick in our minds so effectively? I think it taps into our most primal fear regarding the spaces we trust.
Yes, the violation of safe spaces.
We want our emotional zoning laws to hold up. A childhood playground is a place of joy, but Ashwood turns that joy into an incredibly sharp weapon.
It preys on the creeping dread of inevitability.
Yeah. The terrifying idea that a single, minuscule mistake, just looking at the wrong thing in the dark, zooming in on a camera lens, failing to ignore a sound, can completely lock in your fate before you even realize you've made an error.
Right.
Noah thought he was safe in his living room, but the timestamp on his photograph proved he was already dead. The trap sprung in the past, present, and future simultaneously.
It speaks to a deep, underlying human anxiety about predestination and our complete lack of control over our own environments.
We really want to be in control.
We desperately want to believe that if we follow the rules, the physical laws of the world, the emotional boundaries we set, we will remain safe.
But we aren't.
But Ashwood Playground represents an absolute violent violation of all physical rules except its own biological imperatives.
And speaking of its own rules, I want to leave you all with a brand new thread to unravel on your own tonight.
Oh, this is a good one.
Something that builds directly on the mechanical evidence from our deep dive today, but leaves a massive, terrifying question mark.
Go for it.
Think about this. If that rusted chain buried in the dirt proves this cycle has been happening for over a century, and the playground constantly requires a new human lure to replace the old one, what happens to the previous bait?
The turnover rate of a supernatural trap.
Exactly. When Noah Briggs was absorbed into the system, when he took his seat on that tallest swing and asked the next teenager to play, what happened to the little girl in the white dress?
Where did she go?
Do the old lures, after decades of serving this entity, finally get to cross over and rest? Or is the reality of this ecosystem much, much worse?
I think we both know the answer to that.
Do they just sink deeper into the dirt of that empty lot, slowly losing their eyes, their faces smoothing over, their mouths growing wider and wider with too many teeth, until they become the very eyeless children that chase Noah in the dark?
A horrific, forced metamorphosis.
Yeah.
It suggests the ecosystem is entirely self-sustaining, fueled permanently by the gradual degradation of human identity. The lure eventually rots and becomes the predator, requiring a new lure to be caught.
Just something to think about the next time you walk past an empty dirt lot in your neighborhood after midnight. Remember, if you hear the swings moving and you know there is absolutely no wind, keep your eyes pointed straight ahead.
Don't look.
Do not look, do not touch, do not speak, and whatever you do not count the swings. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay safe out there.